tonight to accommodate everybody. For anybody, if you didn't get a copy or would like a copy of the material and it's not available, it is available on our website, or you can always reach out to our office afterward and we'd be happy to send it to you, because we were not anticipating a crowd this large tonight. One more time, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. We do have a mic, but it's for the purpose of live streaming, so that I will say it's over here. If you plan to make a comment tonight, if you could please stand up and either move toward the mic or make sure that your voice carries. That way, if anybody is watching this afterward, they can hear everything. This room is kind of echoey, so if we could keep the background noise to a minimum. Let's see, we'll kick this off. So I am Sarah Davis. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the IDA. I'm here to moderate this public hearing. So the way that we start this is I'll read through the notice of public hearing. We do technically have two separate projects. However, I think most of the public would really consider them to be one. So if nobody here objects, we'll have the public hearing sort of simultaneous to apply to both projects. Who here is interested in kicking off with a short presentation from the solar developer? Show of hands. Okay, so then I think we will do that. Let me read through the notice first, and then I will introduce Andy Welch. Okay, so notice is hereby given that a public hearing pursuant to Article 18A of the New York State General Municipal Law will be held by the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency on the 6th day of June 2023 at 6 p.m. local time at the Lodi Fire Hall, 8557 State Route 414, Lodi, New York, in connection with the following matters. Whereas Lodi PV LLC and Lodi 2 PV LLC, New York Limited Liability Companies, for themselves or on behalf of an entity to be formed by it or on its behalf, has submitted an application, a copy of which is on file with the agency, requesting the agency's assistance with respect to a certain project consisting of the acquisition of approximately 60 acres of vacant land located at 8999 State Route 414, Town of Lodi, of solar modules and supportive racking, inverters, transformers, and associated wiring and other components necessary for the generation of approximately 5 megawatts AC of electricity for interconnection with the existing NYSEG electrical grid, with related amenities, and 3, the acquisition and installation by the company in and around the improvements of certain items of equipment and other tangible personal property. The initial owner of the facility will be the company. The agency will acquire a leasehold interest in the facility from the company and lease the facility back to the company. At the end of the lease term, the agency will terminate its leasehold interest. The agency contemplates it will provide financial assistance to the company in the form of exemptions from sales and use taxes, exemptions from mortgage recording taxes, and abatement of property taxes. A representative of the agency will, at the above stated time and place, hear and accept written comments from all persons with views in favor of or opposed to either the proposed financial assistance to the company or the location or nature of the facility. A copy of the application for financial assistance filed by the company with the agency, including an analysis of the costs and benefits of the proposed facility, is available for public inspection at the offices of the agency, 1 DeCronio Drive, Waterloo, New York. Okay? Question already?
Yes. Can we identify the members of the Seneca County IDA with an introduction, a very brief introduction, as well as members that represent the company or the utility interests so we know who's who?
Of course, yes. So I'm the executive director of the agency, a staff member. 2 folks at the table here, Dave Hewitt and Kelly Klein, are also IDA staff members. We have, and our special guest, we have 3 IDA Board of Directors members here in the audience that I've noticed. We have Bruce Murray, Ralph Lott, and Ben Guthrie. And then on behalf of the solar developer, we have Andy Welch. And Andy, if you would introduce.
This is Kyle is our landscape developer from Wendell Engineering. And also present is our landowner, Bob Stack.
as a matter of business, I'll hand it over to Andy shortly. Because of the size of the group, we will not be answering questions tonight. You are free to come up and ask a question, and we will make note to get back to you either by phone or by email, whichever is more convenient, just to keep things going. And we will be limiting comments to 3 minutes so that we can get through
What's the
everybody's.
purpose of a public forum if you can't speak?
Or if the public can't hear your answer, so I appreciate that you would give a private answer, but don't the people who are here deserve to hear the answers to everyone's question?
That is a great point. Let's see how we're doing on time, and we'll make an effort to answer questions tonight if that's feasible. How about that?
Awesome.
Okay. All right, Andy, if you would take it away, please.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see if I can get I had the computer set up, but may have gone to sleep on me. My name is Andy Welch. I'm with RIC Energy. We are the developer of this project. Should be doing that. There we go. Okay. So RC Energy, we're part of a global company, but we're headquartered in New York, and primarily most of the projects that we're developing are these community solar projects in the state of New York. As I mentioned before, the land that we're leasing, that we're going to do the project on is owned by Bob and Suzanne Stack. Briefly, what the project is a community solar project. It's actually 2 projects. By regulation, we're limited to the projects, a community solar project to be 5 megawatts. We have 2 5-megawatt projects there. They take up a total of about 60 acres, about 30 for each. They are photovoltaic PV projects. We're using bifacial cells, which means that they're able to generate electricity from light hitting on either side. We have what's called a single-axis tracker, so these panels will rotate as the sun position in the sky changes throughout the day, so as to follow it, so as to maximize the energy that's taken from them. We've got here numbers, 23 inverters, it's thousands of panels, stepping up to 13.2. We go underground until we get to power lines that we have to build above ground to connect into the utility. Those 2 projects are actually going to be sharing a driveway between them. This gives you an overall kind of a simulation look at that. We take an existing overhead picture and we put the project on it, as you can see, just where things are with 414, Chrisfield Avenue in the back, or Chrisfield Road, excuse me, in the back. As you can see, Lodi Solar 2, with the driveway connecting the 2 of them. Let's got an overall look at it. As you can see on this plan, we've got rows of these trackers that are running north and south, and then from east to west is where the tracker goes. Now, the key to this project that has been pointed out to us as we're developing several points and really an insistence of our landowner is the concern for what the visual impacts are of the project from Route 414. They have, we have different 2 segments of the project that you'll see the way we're landscaping it. The concern was when you're driving southbound on 414, just when you come and kind of get the bend in the road there, in front of this property site is when it opens up, and on days that aren't like today, you can see the lake and the hills from it. So we don't want to have something that's either distracting the view or diminishing of that view. So as you approach the property, it's actually on the road, just off ahead of you and off to the left. And you'll be able to see it then past the home that's on the north side of it. And in that area, what we've done is we've developed a landscaping plan see pretty thick trees up there, in which we're completely blocking the view. We're putting in the trees such that you cannot see through them. They're staggered front and back and layered along there. So that as you're driving down, you'll just see this row of trees to the left, and as you come around, it'll open up as you get down a little further. Now, we didn't want to continue that solid row of trees because that actually can have a negative impact as well. You don't have, essentially, as you're driving past a wall alongside of you at all times. It's a little constricting, claustrophobic type feeling. So we looked at it in consideration. Once you get to the point where it is not in front of your view, but you have to turn your head to look out to see it on your peripheral vision out of your driver's window, and you've got the view to the left. We've got what we call soft screening, and in that area we've got a mix of different types of trees and grasses and shrubbery and all, so that you will be able to see the project through there, but you'll first see this greenery and including some what we call pollinator mix, but wildflowers along the ground. So this is the Lodi project area, and as you can see, from all there. Why didn't that work? Anyway, you can see as we get up in that northern area, the thickness of trees, and then it opens up. For the second project, we don't have the same frontage of road, so we don't really have the landscaping concern. There's existing trees that surround it basically along the brook to the house on the west side of it and along Chrisfield Road. One of the keys is that, and we've been asked this several times, is, well, okay, so you promised to put in a tree screening, or are you going to start off by putting in, little 2-foot bushes that are going to grow into trees in 30 years? And that's absolutely not the case. And you can see, this size and specifications column up here is one of the keys. You can see that first area with the eastern red cedars and red spruce is the cover. We've got 7-foot minimum height. That, when you consider that you're driving by, your head's about 4, maybe 6 foot if you're going to pick up a truck off the ground. That's completely screening from the data put in. They will grow taller with age, but we're not counting on growth as to be screened. The idea is to put in mature plants that are enough to create a screen right away. To not go cheap, and then you can see we do the same thing with the later area with a mix of bushes and trees that will be adequate height to screen and soft screen the project. And further, we are calling out all down into details, the planning details, so that these will become something that turns into the construction contractor, landscape contractor, to make sure it's all put in right. This is a landscape engineer who has developed this and said, okay, you take these trees and you put them in this way, and this is the best way to make sure that they have good, strong, long lives. In accord with this, and I pulled this over, I don't quite know why, but see if I can figure out where this is. But anyway, I showed 3 and 4. If you will, right up at the corner of the project, the northern corner is where you'll see 1, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then about halfway down between that point and 3 is where photo number 2 will come. This is the existing photo. As you can see, that's the property here behind the boat on the left. So as you come down the road, this is where you can see the corn or the soil or whatever been growing there in the past. After we put in, this is a simulation. There are solar panels behind there, fully simulated and all, but you can't see them because we've got a complete blockage of the trees to go in. The next site, as I said, further down the road, this is a point at which you have to, in order to see this view, existing view, you have to look out the driver's window as you're zipping down the road. And this is our soft screening idea. You see, we've got panels back here it so that it's not something that will necessarily catch your eye. You'll be able to see them, but you don't really have to turn and look at them and focus. The next point is where our driveway will be. We have one driveway in, it runs 90 degrees perpendicular to 414. It will be gravel, but it moves directly. It's about 20 feet wide, moves directly back. We do have to have utility poles alongside of it, but as you can see, we screen those utility poles on the outsides by trees. This is just a view that, obviously, as I said, 20 feet wide, going 40 miles an hour, this is about a second to take you to go by that.
For the build function, during the construction phase, where will the trucks, contract trucks, cement trucks, material trucks, delivery trucks, how will they access the site? Through the 414 corridor?
Yes. And then this is just a brief show from standing on Chrisfield Road. We're simulating valves. One of the keys is, if you notice this, the tree right up here, you can still see all the way down the tree. So, for the residents behind, who are homes and decks are elevated, they'll be able to see over the panels and continue to see the view that they have today. And that's basically, we could go on longer, but I think that's kind of the key that I thought most people would be interested in. Did you want me to take questions?
We can
Okay,
take some questions now.
please.
What's the setback from 414 before you plant your landscaping?
Okay, so for the existing 414, it's about existing 30 to 40 foot right of way that is there now from between the edge of the pavement that's what's still owned by
The highway.
by the state, by the highway. So we start after that. So our setback is going to be, the plantings are going to be, I guess about 50 feet. It varies a little bit because that narrows up some, but about 50 feet or so, and then it's going to be another 50 to 100 feet back for where the panels are. Yes,
What is the height of the solar panels?
height of solar panels is just under 10 feet, and that's at its peak. Obviously, as they're moving, they'll be lower at times.
Could there be glare? You said that this moves with the sun, so, the sun sets on the west side.
Right. So there's several things to think about. And it's one of the advantages of these tracker ones. Okay, so like all solar panels, solar panels are designed not to reflect any light, because any light that's reflected off is energy that they've lost. So they maximize what comes in. Further, these will all have anti-glare coating on them to minimize the reflection that comes off. But the third factor is, and if you picture this, because we're always facing the sun, that no matter where it goes, the reflection, like if you held a mirror at it, is always going to be back up in the air. So, sometimes the fixed, we've all seen, the fixed solar panels where as the sun moves, you can get a reflection off in a different direction. Well, because we're always reflecting right back at the sun, it minimizes the opportunity for any glare. Yes, sir.
First, I want to say thank you. We appreciate that you're concerned about the beauty of our environment. But what guarantee does the town of Lodi have that you'll actually invest tens of thousands of dollars in shrubbery?
Well, for several reasons. One, it's part of our secret application. So in order to meet the requirements of the law, we have to build a project that's been approved. We're in that, and further we have agreements with the IDA, who still have the ability to, if they choose, to put penalties upon us if we fail to deliver as we promised. I'll be with you next.
Do you plan to use local contractors for the work and landscaping, et cetera?
Yes, and not only is that because it makes sense to us to use the local and the like, but it's actually a requirement that we have under our IDA application that we not only have to use this, I forget what the exact percentage is, but we have to try to use all and hit certain for local, and we in fact have to pay a monthly fee to them to monitor that we're doing it. Sir?
What about the maintenance on it afterwards? Because probably after, like, let's say you put it in this year, and then next spring, you know, after it goes through the first winter, probably half that shrub will be dead. Just because of the wind and the sheer wind on that side of that road. Who pays for that afterwards, and how many years is that gonna go on? Like, how many, does it go on to the end of the lease, or is it just?
Yeah, we have an obligation to maintain it under our lease.
But I've seen
He
some,
put
like,
us in that,
because I've seen some in like Newfield, that I drove like right by them all the time. And now, I mean, they haven't had a lawnmower in there in 5 years, and now there's locust trees growing up through them. I mean, nobody maintains them after they put them in.
yeah, we have called out on our plans the maintenance schedule as well. That includes springtime mowing and you know, in some cases twice a year activities. I mean, it will be grown to remain wild
Yeah.
in appearance and the like. So it's not golf course maintenance,
Right.
but it will be at least annual.
Actually, I have two questions. One question I have is, what happens with the lease? Like, there's one project in Halsey Lane, rumors going around now that the lease is already for sale. They never even built the project yet. It's still on hold for various reasons. What happens if you sell the lease before you get done with the project? Do they stand with all your, is everything you agreed to is gonna carry over?
Yeah, so even when a project is sold, you know,
What's the reasoning behind that?
it's the permits and the lease all travel.
Why would somebody sell off a lease before they even build the project?
They may not have the cash to build.
And my second question would be, is there any chemicals inside these panels that if they crack, or do you maintain, how do you know if they crack and you're gonna get leaching into the soil? Because you're building right by a stream, same way with Halsey Lane, right by a stream, guess what's right over the hill, the lake?
Yeah,
So what do you have in store for that?
Right, so these are our plastic coated and then cells and then glass on the outside of it. So between those two materials, it's not actually would ever break it, and there's no chemicals in it per se. So you've probably heard that there are concerns in in manufacture of the like of these, but once they've been manufactured, they're solid materials. There's not a leaching issue with them. So one, we do not expect any conditions under which the panels will be broken, that they'll expose the internal elements to rain or the like. Two, they're not subject to leaching because of the way that the condition they're on, the physical state they're on. And three, we have monitoring that would show, the cracking would show, we have 24-hour monitoring, a reduction in output of that particular panel, and then we would send someone out
Then
to
what would you
go
do with them?
maintain it.
What do you do with them after that? The crack panels and stuff?
It'd be replaced.
What do you do with them? Do you recycle them or? do you
Yes,
throw them
everything's,
away?
right, so everything gets recycled from the panel, because it's basically glass, plastic, and silicone.
I have a question, like after the lease and everything, let's say 20 years goes on and nobody's using this anymore, who pays for the cleanup and the dismantling? Or, I mean, you guys put money away, like an escrow?
We've committed to return his property as we found it.
Okay.
And is it an escrow? Because what happens if you go bankrupt?
Yeah.
Or, what happens?
How much things gonna go bankrupt though?
It's typical for arrangements like that. We haven't finished concluding exactly what the form of it will be in this case. Often projects have bonding behind them.
Is this bonded?
That's likely how we'll end up. That's what we'd like to do. What we have to make
So
sure
then
that
the
that's
short-
acceptable to the counterparties.
So there's no regulation or decommissioning? I thought there was. No,
There's what we have done is we've committed to decommission by the state standards. So the NICEA or not, the New York State Energy Administration has standards by which they recommend decommissioning. So, and basically it is returning to its initial, and that's one of the key factors that these solar projects have, because essentially we're just putting pylons into the ground that we're connecting to, You take everything off site, you pull the pilings out of the ground, and it's farmland. Yes, ma'am.
So, excuse me, according to the article that was published by Green Blades One, you're projecting almost $20 million of benefit from this project. I'm wondering by what pathway and what percentage of that money comes back to benefit the people of Lodi, given that you're removing the land from the property tax roll, and I guess the sales tax is kind of a moot point, given that Seneca County did not return any sales tax to Lodi. But what's the benefit to Lodi, and how does that benefit Lodi? That may be more of a question.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
I'll stand up so you guys can hear better. So essentially, the way that our pilots work is a company never comes in and gets a discount on what the value of the taxes already are for that property. So regardless, that property has a certain value, a certain amount of taxes paid on that. That continues to go to the town under our pilot agreement. Where the value of the quote-unquote exemption comes in is that when the panels are built out, New York State has guidelines for what the full value of that would be with the improvements. And the exemption that we provide is on that added value. So the town is actually going to receive more in revenue as a result of this project than it would have without.
Do we know what those dollar amounts are?
Yes, so let me see here. So the town pilot, between the two projects, is roughly $184,000 over the 15-year period of time.
For the town.
For the town. This is just for the town only, because that was your question.
Yes.
Currently, the town receives about $1,200 annually in taxes. So if you take that over the 15-year period, the town would be getting and added, if I can do the math in the top of my head, would be getting about, what, 160, 40?
What was the total? Over 15?
184 over 15 years
184 over 15
versus
years.
1,200 over 15 years.
1,200 a year.
1,200 a year over 15 years.
So it's,
So if somebody wants to do that
so
math,
it's,
but it's significant.
it's a little over 160.
Okay. And then there's an equal portion that goes to the school? Is that?
So the way that it's divvied up is that we have a full pilot payment that gets charged to the developer, and then that has to get divided up between the town, county, and school based on the proportion of their tax rate. So the school, being that school taxes are higher, is going to get more than that. The county would get a little bit less than that. Their tax rate's a little bit lower.
And that follows an ASERTA specification, tax specification, I believe?
So that follows our IDA Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, which was modeled based on some NYSERDA guidelines, yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
In some of the information you got, so you propose to build, replacement acreage for the northern harrier habitat?
That's not this project.
The New York Lodi 1 LLC?
Yeah, that's the Halsey Road
Oh, okay.
project.
And then how do you, I was curious, I don't know if this is the place to answer it, how do you come up with the 15-year term? Is that something to do with
The 15-year term?
Yeah.
That's per our policy, which was modeled off initial NYSERDA guidelines. So there is a statewide exemption through state real property tax law that allows solar facilities to actually be 100% tax exempt on added value panels. So we modeled it based on that 15-year period, but they pay more with a pilot agreement through the IDA than if they applied for the exemption through the state.
We expect to have to deal with the next 15 years because it's got about a 30-year life for the project. So coming into the 15.
Goes back on the tax rolls at full value.
and it gets extended beyond that?
The project will stay in effect, and unless we negotiate another pilot agreement, it will essentially become a tax
So I just wanted to clarify. So in total, the taxes between town, county, schools is basically the $4,500 per megawatt or $45,000, right?
Yes, so it's $4,500 per megawatt additional that gets divvied up between the town, county, and school,
Right.
yes.
Right. Okay.
And then that actually increases 2% every year.
And a little over half of that goes to the schools.
Yes,
Yeah, the school tax rate is, actually, it is a little over half. The school tax rate right now is about 58% of the total. Town of Lodi is at 23% and county's at 19%.
And as we like to point out, these projects tend not to place any burdens on the town, county, or school district as far as increasing their costs. So those tend to all be just benefits to those parties.
So the anticipated lifetime of the panels is what?
30 years.
And then what?
Then we recycle them all and return the land back to farmland.
So you would be done at that point? You would not replace them?
We would have to renegotiate the lease with the landowner. And I would be very happy if Bob and I were both still around in 30 years to renegotiate that. But that's where it is. The lease would expire at that point with us having returned it. And extension beyond land would be a new business deal.
Is that a realistic lifetime for solar panels?
It's typical.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the assumption I think most projects have.
So the math on that is over a 15-year period, we would get 18,000 versus 184,000 from the town perspective. So that's a delta of a positive income of 166,000.
Thank you.
And is that an annual payment to the town then?
so the town gets paid annually. The numbers that he's talking about are over the total 15-year period. In the first year, the payment is the lease, so we would expect the total town payment to be right around $5,700. By year 15, we expect the town payment to be $7,300.
Can you talk a little bit about the building stage, not just all the trucking, but how much time, how that works?
So we anticipate it'll take about 3 to 4 months to construct it. There's very, fortunately for this site, there's very little grading work that needs to be done. So, the first thing that will be done is the road will be put in to access for the equipment. Then basically it will just be a matter of primarily putting in the support poles for these. We're talking about single access trackers. What they are is just an axis of a series of piles that we drive into the ground and map on there. So first you drive your piles in, then you attach your axis and you put your piles on top of that. Then you do the landscaping and essentially put in the fence, and that's all we have to do. It's done on the project. I guess there's some amount of electrical equipment that's put in as well that we've got because there's 2 transformers, one for each project located center to the site, so that we use the panels to block any view of the kind of the typical electrical equipment that you'd see or a manufacturing facility or generating facility.
Idea how much money the government's giving.
So not each support stanchion is cemented, but just driven.
Right, and pending a geotech, if the land is what we think it is, what all the data shows it is, that it does not need concrete to hold it.
So from a noise standpoint, does the machine that puts the poles in, does that make a lot of noise? It's kind of.
It's not completely silent. I'm not exactly sure on this land what it'll be. I haven't actually been around when we constructed one of these, so I can't honestly tell you. But it shouldn't be a lot, and it's a daytime construction activity as well. But it should. this isn't a major piling that's being driven, like you would have for a building or something that you put in. It's only going a
They're
few
driven
feet deep.
by oscillators, they're down.
Yeah, it's not right, so
Right.
it's gonna be
It's just
shaken
an
into the
actual-
ground as opposed to a,
Right.
you know, large hammer type structure. And that's what would typically be noise. The oscillators is just gonna sound like
And vibrate.
construction equipment, engines and the like.
Are wildlife gonna be able to move through there? Are there going to be access points for the deer, et cetera?
So the deer are gonna have to go around it. The small wildlife, we typically leave about 6 inches underneath the fence, for them, to make their way through.
So the fencing around the perimeter would be prohibited though for the deer access?
Yes, which is probably best for both the deer and for the projects. Yes, ma'am.
At this point, do we know of any species that may be affected, that are habitating there now? Or, I mean, is that something that's been
Right, so
researched?
we've conducted the studies for, that's part of the information that we provided is in our secret of any threatened or endangered species that are supposed to be in the area. We did a winter raptor survey and found no birds of prey that were using the land in any way, either living there or hunting on it, and no other species of concern have shown up on it. That being said, as indicated with the fence, there's really no reason that that precludes future use. It's mostly grassland and flower mix around it, so we don't anticipate a negative impact on any wildlife.
So you use the acronym SEEKR, could you relate what SEEKR is, because I don't think everybody knows.
Okay, that's it's the State Environmental Quality
Review Act.
Thank you. And that's just, that's where you make sure that whether a project like this typically gets, they call it negative declaration under it, which is where they find it has no significant impacts on any of the various concerns that they have, anything from the wildlife impact to the impacts on the community, many different subject areas.
So, the cost of the project is $8 million, of which you bank finance 2.4 million. And there's 5.7 million that you say is equity, including grants and tax credits. Can you discuss that 5 million portion? Where is that coming from?
Taxpayers.
No, I mean, it's basically coming from the investment that we put in, my parent company puts in, or that we get other partners to come in and put in.
Okay, so
And they can benefit, when we talk about the tax credits, that they're taking a benefit from that because they can get federal tax credits for making an investment in the project. So it's not so much, as the situation is, not so much grants, but, I mean, that's kind of the information that the way the form is filled out, but it's investment tax credits. So if you put the money in, you get to get the benefit of that. So it's not money being taken away, it's new investment being made that is helping the infrastructure.
So your company is investing approximately $5 million then?
That's what we consider at this point. We are not we have to first get permitted and have all of our deals in place before we can, before we actually do the final financing of it, so it could be subject to change.
And that's actually just for one of the 5 megawatt installations, so it's actually approximately double that. Because for, like you said, for the community solar purposes, it's 2 separate projects, so you have to sometimes combine the math there.
Quick question on notification. How was the town board notified of the pilot agreement? Because we received no information whatsoever.
So our process is regulated by the state is when we put out a public hearing notice, we have to send that notice to all the impacted municipalities. That includes the town board, so the supervisor who's here tonight would have received notice. The school board receives notice. The county board of supervisors receives notice. And that's sort of the first opportunity.
And when was
Here.
notice sent out?
So we send out notice, it has to be at least 10 days in advance. According to our notice of public hearing, we sent it out May 19th.
And how long has this project been on the IDA's radar?
This project came to us with an application in, let's see if I have the dates here.
Middle March.
Yeah, so it first came for consideration before the IDA board at our March, I think it was 23rd or 25th board meeting. And the way that our process works, for those that aren't aware, so that first meeting is us taking in the application, reviewing it, asking any questions, and then if the board approves what's called an inducement resolution, that essentially says, okay, we accept that this application is full and complete, and we plan to schedule a public hearing. This is then the next step is we hold the public hearing, and then, you know, we have board members here tonight, everybody's comments and questions here get shared with the remaining board members, and it goes before the board for final discussion and potential final approval.
So it's not final yet?
No.
I just wanted to know, that I think there are a few of us here that have something to say, that it's not, we don't have questions, I just wanted to let you know.
Yep,
I
we'll
know.
get to that. So are there
That's
any last questions, and then let's dive into the comments. Yes, ma'am.
So, you're saying it's not finally approved?
No.
It's not done. What happens if the board doesn't, the IDA does not approve that? Is the project dead?
No comment.
I was gonna say that
We
that's
don't
a
give up
great,
easy, but that's a very real
that's a
possibility.
great question. I mean, there is the real possibility that this project moves forward without IDA assistance, and I would anticipate that solar projects are one of those ones where there are other paths, as I mentioned earlier. There's a statewide property tax exemption that they can take advantage of to help incentivize the project. And so I imagine that there would be other paths that would in some ways be less beneficial to the community because it'd mean less tax revenue coming in. But that's sort of a special case for the way that the state chooses to incentivize renewable energy. It's not necessarily how this would be if we were having a public hearing on, say, a more traditional, you know, manufacturing type project where there aren't a lot of other incentive options, and without incentives, it's likely enough to tank a project. Any last questions? Okay, then we'll move forward with the public comments. Just for the purposes of record keeping, it would be very helpful if you have a comment, if you could stand up and state your name and then state your comment. And again, if we could try to keep these brief, because we do have a large group, I don't want everybody to be here super late at night, let you get home to your families. So I guess we'll just, is there anybody that would like to kick us off with the comments?
So my name is Debbie Cummings, I've been a resident of Lodi for 10 years, and I'm also on the planning committee since October 22, so I'm very new to all of this. This is mostly probably for the IDA, not really so much for the solar company. So I just have some statements and comments, I don't have any questions. I would like to start by reading a quote from the IDA's executive summary from 2019 that I had read online. Why the Seneca County Economic Development Strategy. The businesses in Seneca County face pressures from economic competition, changing market conditions, and technological innovation. It is the role of economic developers to help community to county businesses succeed and grow, and to create a climate for economic success that will prove attractive to businesses that might consider Seneca County as a location for their development strategy is intended to serve as a guide for how and where to focus economic development resources throughout Seneca County, end of quote. And another quote, economic development is the establishment of policies, practices, and programs that support the ability of businesses in the county to retain, create, or attract new jobs and or wealth to improve quality of life in our communities. These solar farms are not what we have in mind for economic development strategy in Lodi. I don't believe this is our next generation of growth that we have in mind. Agriculture and food production, tourism, including agritourism, destination tourism, and culture heritage tourism, to coin a few phrases I had read on the development strategy, is what we envision here in Lodi. Surely there must be other areas to construct a 75-acre solar farm that is not visible from the 414 Scenic Byway corridor. Lodi is not looking to become an industrial solar town, especially along the corridors of Route 414, where the plan is to install approximately 75 acres of solar panels, and then there is the 24 acres on Halsey Road. Where to next? Is this your vision of Lodi? We all understand the importance of large-scale solar energy and adding to the electric grid. Let's integrate these projects then to fit within the character and landscape of Lodi community as a whole. New York's Constitution vows to protect its scenic beauty while developing and improving agricultural land. Please allow me to remind you that in 2012, the New York State Senate approved legislation to make an 18-mile stretch of Route 414 between Watkins Glen and Lodi an official scenic byway, protecting the visual beauty that attracts tourism and farming, which has historically been the lifeblood of the majority of our residents. This legislation was signed into law and made official on August 2nd, 2012. I am all for solar power. I am all for solar power, but not to the point of disrupting the community. You can really lose the reality that is clean energy, clean air, clean water, good jobs, local tax revenue, if these are just big developers moving in with little care for the communities they are operating in. Has anyone from our community walked this proposed site with members of the IDA? I don't know if our town board has been involved. Have members of the IDA walked the site? I think that there are certain places that should just be off limits to solar farms, and this 414 corridor, noted as the Seneca Scenic Byway, is one of them. My hope is, if this is to be a reality, that the proper landscaping, trees, berms, etc., neighboring owners and the travelers along 414 Scenic Byway corridor will not even notice that the 75-acre obstructive solar farm is even there. I'm not even sure of the height, but thank you for all your information that you did mention. In closing, I would like again to reiterate, I am all for clean energy. I am not against solar panels. I am not against solar farms. It is where they are positioned that I have concerns. I realize there is so much that goes in to what your agency does for Seneca County, and more than I can even fathom regarding solar farms. I would ask the IDA moving forward to respect and look out for all the small towns that have no zoning and no land use restrictions or regulations in place, but might be working on incorporating such things. Putting a 75-acre solar farm on the 414 corridor is not the IDA looking out for Lodi's best interest, and that's just my opinion. I am here today doing what feels natural at this point in time for the town of Lodi. The scenic byway on Route 414, in my opinion, is not a good position for 75 acres of a solar farm. Thank you for hearing me tonight, and I do thank you all for what you are doing and contributing to the Seneca County. I will end with this. A wise man once said, a community is defined by what it says no to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else here that would like to make a comment this evening?
My name is Martha Mosher. I'm a Lodi resident. I'm also a member of the Lodi Planning Board. Some of the questions, I'd also like to state that I buy my power from Delaware Solar. So I'm not anti-solar. I have questions and concerns about this particular project. One of my first questions was the date that there was a written contact made by the IDA with the town of Lodi supervisor or town board. You're saying the notice went out on the 23rd? After the May 23rd, I contacted our supervisor and he had received nothing. So what date did you get a confirmation of receiving that from the supervisor?
So our notice was sent May 19th. I would have to look back at our records, so we send everything and request signature. We can, in our office, check our records and see what date it was signed for at the town
I would
office.
appreciate that, just so that we know, okay? Also, there's an error on the site approval documents. Under the adopted land use plan, section C, Lodi has an adopted farmland protection plan. The final draft was from 2010. It was adopted by the town board before 2018 or 2013, and it does directly address the 414 corridor. May I ask you to please look into that?
Of course. Under the designated public resources, on our near project site section, I do believe that New York State recommends that solar projects not be built on prime agricultural farmland, and that is prime agricultural farmland. On the cost-benefit analysis, I have questions, which I do not necessarily expect to be answered tonight. Ongoing payroll. The rate listed infers either an electrical engineer or a highly trained technician with experience in monitoring industrial level power generation. I doubt someone fits that description. Where is the office of the company contracted to run the site? Will this person be expected to have no salary adjustments for the 15-year life of the pilot? This salary will not stay in Seneca County, and the managing entity will have very good reasons for an outside area that hire. In terms of capital costs, I cannot find listed in Seneca County anyone that manufactures any of the parts that will make up this project. If any of the $8 million plus per section stays here, it would be a wholesaler's fees between the manufacturer and the builder. Therefore, the figure quoted is not valid for Seneca County. Property tax will change as there should be at least 2 reassessments during the life of the farm. I would hope that we are not mandated to accept the mill rate listed. Decommissioning. The statement is that at the end of the life of the project, the structures will be removed and the land returned to agricultural uses. For 25 years, we will have had possible soil contamination from lead, cadmium, selenium, and tellurium, and I understand what you've told us. And I think on-site monitoring is minimal, but we don't really know 25 years down the road because there haven't been enough projects out there on site, for 25 years with the latest technology. All right. While trace amounts of selenium are required for farm animal and human health, the others are toxic or carcinogenic. What soil monitoring, which has been partially answered, will be performed and what remediation abatement is planned? If there is soil contamination, the acreage will never again be used for production of food for human or animal consumption, and Lodi has lost 90 acres of prime farmland. You partially answered the bond question, and I appreciate that. There may be a bond in place to make sure that it is decommissioned properly to standards 25 years out. In conclusion, it appears that the only entity that is gaining by this project is the IDA. Lodi is taking all the risks. And to take that risk, you are asking us to give away part of the property tax that may partially make up for that risk. You are asking the school system, which is already underfunded, to give away funds that might help raise its abysmal state test rating. This is a bad ask. This project is proposed for the wrong acreage. The pilot is based on incorrect assumptions and needs to be rewritten with the input of the communities involved.
then come back to us and see where we are.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Maybe we can touch base afterward and exchange contact info so we can follow up on those with you.
Please.
Any other comments? Okay.
Just a quick comment. So, first of all, large attendance from the ones and other ones in Seneca County. So, congrats to everybody being here. I think the questions were absolutely on point and great, in part because I've asked a lot of them to RIC, and he knows that. We came to this area 20 years ago. We were driving down 414, you go around Townsend's Curve, which is where our property starts, and the sky opens up to the right? One of the more beautiful vistas we could ever see. Subsequently bought the property. We lived there, had a restaurant, did weddings in the barns, rented out farmland to a brick farm. We've been very, very proud of being in the Lodi community and being stewards of land. Our farmers took great care of the land. We took great care of our home, the restaurant, the barns. We were really proud of being here and doing what we did. We plan to be those same great stewards with this project. And I think Andy would attest that we are making sure that not only the project is done, our projects can be done, great, they can be done not so poorly. We can look at other solar installations up to 318. On 318, I don't know who built it, why they built it like they did, but it's horrible, right? I think that with the buffering and the plants and the pollinator mix and what have you, it's going to be a very nice and quality installation, and that's what we want to have. I want to make sure that it's maintained, because it's my land, and it's my reputation, and I don't want to drive back here 2 years, 3 years, 10 years later and see something that is nice to it. It is not what we want to have happen. So, to all of you, and to Andy and to the IDA, I will do my very best to make sure that that doesn't happen. We're proud to have lived here for 20 years, and we're proud of those memories, and we want to make sure that those are made. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other comments from anybody here?
I'll just mention that any of you that lived here for any amount of time have driven by that restaurant and environment and seen him before he bought it and looked at him before he sold. He put a lot of love into that night. He's not going to let go. That's his life.
I don't think anyone here is necessarily questioning their intent for the land. We're questioning positioning. We're certainly not intending to bar, and plus we could not constitutionally or legally bar programs from, solar farms from all of Lodi. It's just not going to happen. The fact that from the plans that I saw, and the fact that Mr. Stack has already taken care of a lot of the site buffering, because it is still his land, so he has more pull to get that done than we do. I think everybody on the town board and on the planning board is going to be very thankful that he has put that pressure on the company to accompany that. But from my standpoint, is we have learned from coal, burning coal, we have learned from all of the things that have gone wrong before, is not to jump too early to say this is 100% safe. We need to understand, and then understand who's taking the financial risk, and where that risk is placed, and how it is placed, before we're comfortable with this going forward. And part of that is getting the towns perhaps involved in this before, and saying, can you afford to give someplace between 31% to 46% of your taxes on an annual basis away? Well, maybe Lodi can't, maybe the county can, maybe the school system can, but we can't, all right, because of things that have happened previously. And that is part of the discussion, the problem that I see with this IDA pilot, is there, you know, so
But it's
we
gonna
have a
benefit
room full
Lodi.
of people who are concerned, where if that door had been opened sooner and we had been brought on sooner, there would be questions here tonight, but there might not be some of the agitation that exists in the room tonight.
But Lodi is gonna benefit by taxes.
I'm sorry?
I said Lodi is gonna benefit by receiving taxes. And at this point, there's no other solar farms going up. So why, I mean,
Halsey Lake is one. It's right over there. They didn't, we didn't have any of this for Halsey Lake. We had one meeting with you, and you said it was benefiting, whatever, and nobody showed up to it. So, I mean, I agree with her. It should have been brought up. There should have been more, the town should have had more input in Halsey Lane too. And it didn't happen. I agree with her. It should have happened.
All right, so we're asking that it happen now. We're not saying we're gonna kill the project, okay? There may be many reasons why killing the project is not beneficial to the town. But what we need to do is set up a way, an open communication corridor that kicks in sooner, that brings in information from more sources, rather than get something, seeing something in the newspaper that appears to be a fait accompli, and we have no, you know, we're after the fact, we're running to catch up. And that's, I think, what has brought most of the people in the room here tonight.
so I would say that's between
Maybe
the
not all of
town
them,
and the
but, you
IDA.
know, okay, maybe not all of them, but, you know.
I guess I will say to that, I'm sorry that you feel that way. The intention of our public hearings is never to be a rubber stamp. It really is to get the public input. And like I said, this project is not, you know, it's not approved. This is all part of the process. And like I said, at this point, it's up to our IDA board to really consider all of the concerns and the questions that you all have raised here tonight and make a decision about whether or not it's best to move forward with the project. That being said, I'm certainly happy. I have some business cards with me. I'm happy to hand them out. You're free to, you know, email, call, ask questions. I'm happy to talk more about the pilot and the way it's structured. I know it's one of those things that gets very difficult sometimes to understand because we have to talk about the value of the exemption per state law. But it's one of those things where really the town, without these projects, is expected to receive about $1,200 annually for that property in taxes, whereas with the project, you know, a single one of these solar pilots is expected to bring in $5,700, and that's times two, so you're really looking at more like $11,000 a year in taxes to the town that would not have otherwise been coming in. So, you know, I get the point that you're making. I respect it. I do just want to, you know, clarify that for the record. Yes, sir, you had a question.
I had a question about the rates, like the power rates. Is that like for on these big solar projects that you put in anywhere, like the local people, do they benefit from the rate or?
So the intent of the community solar, as opposed to what's in New York State referred to as utility scale, which are the larger projects. So the community solar, which is what we're dealing with, there's two 5-megawatt projects. That means that as members of the community, you can actually go and subscribe to these projects and you can receive a discount on your energy bills as a result of that. And you do that directly through the developer. They typically on their website have a way for you to sign up. So somebody here mentioned that they're subscribing to Delaware River Solar.
Yeah.
So it's something that's done with these small projects and is intended to be a benefit, you know, to the people locally where the project is happening.
Wouldn't it be, when you want to tell like the local people about that? Because a lot of people don't know anything about these solar projects or, you know, that's the thing about New York State. They do horrible trying to, they want to push all this stuff. I'm on the geothermal side of things. And I complain to New York State all the time that, you know, we don't educate the public enough about geo and solar. And I think stuff like that, because I would never know about, you know.
It's one of those questions that we've had, and unfortunately in the IDA, we don't have the bandwidth to do all the marketing for the solar developers on their behalf. Andy, maybe you can speak to what the plans are to market the.
Yeah, I guess the simple answer is it's too early. We can't offer today because it's not approved. So once it starts construction is when the marketing will go out and the mailing opportunities and everything else. But typically that's just to get people's interest to say, hey, would you like to sign up for something you can take advantage of a year from now? Doesn't really work. So that's why the effort is made closer to when you can actually get benefit from it.
What do we use around here for power anyway, in this area? Do you do any?
In New York, I mean, obviously,
Well, just in this area
in this,
here.
well, I mean, it's
You say
an
it's like
interconnected grid, so I mean, you do get benefits from the nuclear plants. You know, there's import from Canada, and so on. There's in the, you know, a lot of, just in the coal and gas projects from the Midwest that switch it on. So it's all kind of depends on, it's a mix. It depends on the time, and it's getting to be more and more renewable.
Any final questions or comments
One
before?
more comment, Brenda Eastman, I would really appreciate the idea, making sure that you sent out the notices that you said previously that would have gone to the town of Lodi, but the councilman here has said that he's not received.
Yeah, I received
Yeah.
no information. Kyle forwarded us a note from legal on the 2nd, and then the follow-up on the 2nd of June. And we were under the impression the IDA gave us no tax credit whatsoever for the project. So obviously communication to your board is key.
I'm coming as a representative for the school, I'm on the school board, and as far as I know, we have not either. We have a board meeting on the 24th of May, we have another one tomorrow night. There's nothing on the docket that says that we're going to ask to accept it yet, so could you please check on that?
Yes, yes.
Where's the proposed site for this?
So the proposed site, the address is 8999 State Route 414.
Why is it on Route 414? Why can't it be up on Hector grazing where nobody sees it? This way, people are gonna come in to Lodi from the south, and the first thing they're gonna see is a solar farm. Why don't you put it up there where nobody can see it?
That is a great question. Perhaps Andy can make reference.
So there's two elements to that question, one of which is that, you know, these are considered distributed generation projects, so they fit on the grid. There's only certain places on the electrical grid where you can interconnect projects, and that, from my line of work, that's one of the most difficult things, is to find locations that we can put projects that we can feed the output into the system without needing to do substantial new construction. That's what makes this a good site, that we can hook into the line right where we are, the one that runs along 414. The answer to the seeing it, I know you came late, so one of the things that we spent a while on, and there's some posters over there that you can take a look at, the effort that we're going to do to screen them with new plantings, large new plantings that we're going to put in along 414 to really take that negative visual impact away. As we stated, our landowner, Bob Stack, has been quite insistent that we do that as part of his efforts to be a good steward.
What's the shelf life on these solar panels?
We anticipate the project life to be about 30 years.
What's gonna happen to them after that?
They get recycled. So basically all the parts get taken apart and either used in other uses or used to create more solar panels at that point.
Okay, any final questions?
Another public hearing, because there's a lot of people that had no idea that this was happening tonight.
At the moment, we only have the one public hearing plan. I will say, if you know of people, you know, technically a public written comment, you know, the deadline is typically by the time the public hearing happens, but what I will say is that if anybody, if you know of anybody that would like to submit comment that didn't have the opportunity to, please have them send something in writing to our office. Happy to make sure that that gets included after the fact, before this project goes to final consideration for our board.
Mrs. Eastman, for school board, you had your numbers right for the potential allocation that they provided today?
Not yet.
I see, I think you have the spreadsheet, it's on there.
We don't.
So,
Thank you for
and
that.
that's one of those things, like I said, I apologize. You know, those notices get sent to, you know, addressed to one specific person at one specific address. Obviously, there may be timing issues. We'll look into when things were actually signed for. But like I said, I'm happy to hand out my contact information and to open those lines of communication more informally so that if you have questions, I'm always happy to answer them. So, with that being said, if there's no further comments or questions, thank you everybody for attending this evening. Oh, yes, sir.
In the presentation, I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, but where's the timeline that tells you the milestones in this project? It seems like there's many different steps and approvals and communications. How is that laid out? What's the time frame of this? When's the project going to physically start? When's it going to complete? When are you starting to see some of the benefits of this project? How does that all fit together?
Good question, and it varies based on project. So in general, the IDA approval process takes about 3 months from start to finish. So that's what I mean by start is from the point when an application is received from a company, goes before our board meets monthly. So some of it depends on the timing of when that application is submitted. But in this case, this project first came before the board in late March. Then typically there's a second month where we have public hearing, and then a third month where there's potentially final approval. This one's actually taken some more time because there was some reworking of the site plan with the new landscaping and everything added in to try to accommodate some of those visual concerns that folks were expressing. And then once a project has reached final approval with the IDA, typically in the third month, but sometimes longer, then the project goes to final legal closing, which is the actual signature of the documents. And you'll always notice that in our applications, which are all available on our website for any of the projects that we are considering or have approved, one of the factors that we've added into the application recently has been a project's estimated start of construction and end of construction. So that'll give you a rough idea. Obviously, sometimes things change. If approvals are delayed on the planning level or whatnot. And then once construction has finished, most of our projects, typically construction is about a year, give or take. The pilot agreement, and this gets into some of the complicated stuff that the assessors could better explain, but as many of you know, March 1st is what is referred to as taxable status date. So because of that, and because of when a particular project gets its final approval, the pilot may or may not go into effect. So for this year, if this project goes forward and gets approved, the pilot agreement would be drafted. If the pilot gets submitted to the town prior to March 1st of 2024, then the first pilot payment would be for the 2024 town and county year, 2024-25 school tax year. If that makes sense. So it really depends on the timing of when somebody submits and when the final legal documents are signed.
Is there any conceivable way that we could stop this?
I would say that your comments tonight, everybody, raising their concerns, then, ultimately we'll schedule an IDA board meeting where the board will be considering whether or not to approve the project. Certainly the public is always welcome to attend our meetings and to make comment.
Will that be a secret too, like this meeting?
No, our meetings are always the first Thursday of every month at noon. It's usually published about in the paper, but that, we meet regularly. Our next meeting, I'm happy to give you all the date right now, is July 6th. And we meet in the county office building on the 3rd floor in what is called the Heroes Conference Room, although I would ask, because it's rather a small conference room, that if many of you would plan to attend, please let us know so we can plan on a bigger accommodation. We also live stream our meetings. So if anybody wants to watch them live or watch them after the fact, we have a YouTube channel as well where you can view the meetings. All right. without further ado, thank you again for coming. Like I said, we really appreciate it. I'm happy to pass on my contact information.